A BetterHelp ad. Therapy isn't just for times of major challenge. It's a valuable tool for anyone wanting to improve their well-being. It can help you develop healthy coping skills, set boundaries, and support personal growth. BetterHelp makes it easy to get matched online with a fully licensed therapist right from your phone. No commuting, no waiting rooms. And you can switch therapists at any time. Sign up at betterhelp.com and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com.
Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we take questions from our listeners as part of Mid's Mailbag. But first, this episode is brought to you by IQ Bar, our exclusive snack, hydration, and coffee sponsor. IQ Bar protein bars, IQ Mix hydration mixes, and IQ Joe mushroom coffees are a delicious, low-sugar brain and body fuel you need to win your day. IQ Bar's plant protein bars are the smarter snack choice with plenty of plant protein, tons of fiber, and no added sugar. IQ Mix is a zero-sugar drink that hydrates with electrolytes, improves mood, and boosts clarity. IQ Joe is a mushroom coffee designed for mental clarity and packed with 200 milligrams of natural caffeine. Plus, it comes in 4 different flavors that will totally transform your morning routine. With over 25,000 5-star reviews and counting, more people than ever are fueling their busy lifestyles with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all 3. IQ Bars become part of my daily routines, whether it's starting my morning with IQ Joe, grabbing an IQ Bar, or IQ Mix to refuel or rehydrate after a hard workout. And right now, IQ Bar is offering our special podcast listeners 20% off all IQ Bar products, including the Ultimate Sampler Pack, plus free shipping. To get your 20% off, text MLB to 64,000. Text MLB to 64,000. That's MLB to 64,000. Messages and data rates may apply. See terms for details. And speaking of mood boosting, I don't know exactly that's the direction we're going in with these first couple of questions tonight, given the performance of the team in recent weeks, but we are not going to completely dwell on the current state of the Major League Club. We do have some questions further down the list about all things related to the Orioles organization, but let's just start with these right here. First with KTG TV, also known as Matthew, who asks, what happened to the team? After mid-2024, it went downhill and it doesn't look like much has changed, even though a lot had changed. Things look a little better this year. Do we need new philosophies, new ways to adjust, a change from the top down? It's just weird that we were on top of the baseball world and fell off so quickly. Thoughts? Thanks. And then Devin had a kind of existential question here, which is, if the Orioles are bad, what's the meaning of life? And Nick, I'm sure that you've got some thoughts to that heavy question, so I'll let you start this one off.
Honestly, I did. Honestly, I had a couple of different directions that I thought we could go in, knowing that it's just a mailbag. It's short. We're only going to spend, 2 minutes here on this question or so, but maybe
we can dig in.
Yeah.
A little bit.
A little bit. It's just, I feel like it's everything is so, every reasoning, every thought I have is so nuanced, and it leads to this and leads to that. It's not just one thing. You can't blame one person. It's not just one thing. There's a lot of kinks in the chain, and it's more than just fix this one thing and the operation's going to start to straighten out. But honestly, in thinking about this question, it has led me down that different path, and maybe it led me into that second question there, questioning what is life. Honestly, I'm at a point right now where I'm honestly just done. I'm not watching. I didn't watch tonight. I have no plans on watching this week. It's holiday weekend coming up. Conference tournament started in college baseball at 9 a.m. this morning. I had double screens going at 9 a.m. Remembering that I love the game of baseball because that's what I have to do now. Remind myself that I actually do love this game. It's I don't know. I need a break, basically, is what this question has led me to. It's not one thing. You can't just say it's Michael Elias. You can't just say it's analytics. You can't just say it's an emphasis on hitting the ball hard and nothing else. You can't just say it's the defense. There's no defensive chops anymore. I don't know the word I'm looking for there with this team. So I don't know. It's a question we're all looking for an answer for, though, and that's why we're all frustrated and we're all yelling at each other and we're all pissed off and we all hate life right now, baseball life right now. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have anything like more nuanced right now. It just feels like I know I had that moment a couple weeks ago where I was like, I'm done, like, and my wife could see it, where it's like this isn't just a playful haha, they lost, move on. It really started to get to me, but this time just like feels honestly different. Like maybe I put way too much into this and I need to back off a little bit. It's just baseball at the end of the day, but like it seriously is just like eating at me to a level that it never has before. The actions of this team right now, and it's 20 different things.
It is a lot. I'm starting to feel that detached feeling that I felt last year when it was like, okay, I'm not quite there yet as far as like season's over because the AL is so bad. It's like this year would have been the perfect year to be good and just be easy breezy into the playoffs and take it from there. It didn't happen. And I understand the frustration. I'm mad. I'm frustrated. I get it to an extent where 2022, oh wow, this team's getting better quicker than we thought. Adley's here, going a run, push close to 500 at the end of the season. 2023 hits, everything breaks right. Injury luck is fantastic. Overperforming and guys doing well out of the gate. Gunner having an MVP top 5 type of season. 101 wins, win the division, get swept out of the playoffs, but hey, this is just the beginning. 2024, you trade for Corbin Burns. You get new ownership. You are off to an incredibly hot start. One of the best teams in baseball until June, July-ish. And then it felt like the rug got pulled out from under us, and it's been almost 2 years now of nothing can go right. So hopefully it can even out eventually. I don't think this I hate to say bad injury luck and just sweep it under the rug. No, it's obviously a lot more than that. And who knows? I think it's just baseball creates injuries. That's just the sport, especially on pitching. And I don't think the Orioles are doing anything differently to cause more injuries, but, there have been a ton. Elias is getting crushed. I know Andy did his piece in the Banner, which was well done. I don't necessarily agree with, I don't understand how the 2024 trade deadline led to all this. That doesn't make sense to me. But at the end of the day, it is a results-oriented business. Mike Elias is the guy at the top. It kind of all falls to him. I don't think it's his fault. I think process-wise, the decisions he's made and trades and signings and attempted signings, I don't know what I would have done differently. Obviously, we can't see what's behind the scenes, what the processes are as far as game plan and development and all that kind of stuff. We have no idea. Coaching, we have a brand new coach this year. We're seeing similar issues. And yeah, it's going to take time. I think I like Alvarez a lot. I think it's just going to take time for him to develop his style of baseball and get his guys and what he wants to do. But at the end of the day, if there's no results, then something's got to change. I don't know what it is, but let's bring in that GM, an outside voice, just to be like, is our process good? Do you see anything we're missing? Can we get some new voices in here? What do we have to mix up? And I know I've been talking for a long time, so I'll let Zach talk, but I've just been thinking about this a lot today because there's been some really good conversations in our Discord, a lot of frustration boiling to the surface, but at least we are lucky enough to build this community on the Verge patrons where it's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than Twitter, Facebook, everywhere, Reddit, else out there where it's meltdowns galore. And yeah, if you're looking for that type of community, hey, patreon.com/ontheverge.
There is no one simple answer at this point. We're a year beyond that right now, trying to figure out the one simple answer. It was Brandon Hyde around this time last year getting fired. And I don't, in hindsight, I don't think the Orioles made the wrong decision firing Brandon Hyde. Whether or not it's the right one, I don't know. We'll ever know. I don't think they made the wrong one, though, but that wasn't enough to turn last year around. They had an active offseason this year, the most active one that this franchise has had in a very long time. Yeah, maybe they didn't get everyone at the top of every free agent wish list that was out there, but it was still a very active offseason. and look at where they are right now. Some of those things you can't easily explain. I don't know why Gunnar Henderson is not hitting. I don't know why Pete Alonso has been so up and down. I don't know what's happened to Trevor Rogers other than that he got the flu and maybe he's still not entirely right. But even before that, he was struggling a little bit. I don't know why Shane Baz's fastball doesn't seem like he can locate it consistently. I have no clue what the answer to any of these things is. And I'm frustrated because I'm at a loss for explanations, but I'm also getting really tired of the it's this, do this, takes out there. Well, no, that's not it. It hasn't been one thing for a long time now. You can't just say it's analytics. They got to move on. All 30 teams do some form of analytics. It's not just the Orioles. Maybe
even the
Orioles,
Rockies do it.
yeah,
now.
ask the Rockies and the White Sox how resisting analytics for so long worked out for them. It's not just analytics. Maybe the Orioles aren't communicating it the right way. Maybe there's certain things in our model that need to be tweaked because, guess what? The other 29 teams might have caught up. But it's not just analytics. And with pitcher injuries, that's a huge, huge point of frustration. And that's league-wide. But I don't know. That's the one thing we can't say for sure. Can the Orioles be doing that better? Because that's really behind a wall. And I don't say these things to defend Mike Elias because we'll get into in a few minutes. There, might be a case for a voice, different voices top of baseball operations, but trying to zero in on one problem when there's probably 20 problems at this point, and when one problem resolves itself, another one pops up somewhere over else, is just fruitless. You're just going to frustrate yourself.
No, you're completely right. And yeah, I mean, look, Trevor Rogers, he's still hitting 94, 95. What's the problem here? Why is he sucked now? Didn't see that coming. Kyle Bradish off the injury. I mean, luckily he does seem to be settling in, but it took him some time this season to get his velocity consistent. You can go down the line and just be like, what the hell is going on with this and this and this? Gunnar, like you said, he's chasing everything. He's not walking like he was. He's really, at least since mid-April, he's been terrible. And Pete Alonso has had flashes, but ultimately his numbers are not fantastic for the $30 million man that the bat is reliant on at first base. Kobe Mayo has shown flashes, but not really putting up the numbers you want to see. Really, the only guy doing it is the catching tandem and Adley and Basayo on offense consistently, and Ward. I got to give him. I forget him because he's just quietly walking a million times a game. But love what we've seen from Ward. You could say should have signed Framber Valdez. If we had Framber, first of all, the free agency thing is there's only so much you can do. You can offer as much as you want. Players got to agree to do it. I don't feel like going down that road. But even if, say, you signed Framber Valdez, if we had him, I don't think he's making us a team that's over 500 right now. If we had signed him, it's just there's a bunch of little things. We get blown out one game, we come back and we play a close competitive game but lose, and then we win. It's basically been 1 of 3 or 2 of 5 lately. It's been, they're just finding ways to lose. The talent is there, though. I stand by that, that the talent is there. If they could get their shit together, I think this could still be a good team. It's slowly slipping away again, though, as what are we, 21 and 27, 21 and 28 now? After today, after Monday night when we're recording, Tuesday night, it's not Monday, 21 and 28 after this recording, 7 games under 500, yet still only 2 games out of a wild card spot. It's incredibly frustrating. And I think if another 2-3 weeks of this and we're looking at a repeat of 2025, and then you have some serious questions because you only have a season and a half of Adley, 2.5 of Gunnar. What do you do at that point? Do you do a semi-mini rebuild? Do you double down and say, no, we believe in what we're doing. Process is going to work out eventually? I don't know. I don't get paid the money to figure that out, but I'm a sicko. I have an illness. I'm an Orioles fan for life. I will be here no matter what. I will be podcasting and writing, if I ever get time to do it, about the Orioles no matter what. But man, is it depressing sometimes.
it is that you do look at the standings at this point last year, like you weren't mathematically out, but like they were done. They were out. There was no climbing out of that hole. And that does add a little bit to the frustration there of you look at the wild card standings right now, because if you are a sicko, you've been doing it from like week two. You take a peek just to get a vibe, and you see that they're right there. But this team, they take two or three from the Yankees. And I know the Yankees are reeling, the Yankees issues are starting to like bubble up to the surface and everything. They take two or three from the Yankees. You get so excited, like there's signs of life now. And I know that the last couple of days, it's just been exit velos, the trigger word of the century now, this year, it seems like. But you see this team like really start to, all right, they're offensively, you're seeing a lot of things that point to a breakout here is on the horizon. Like it's right there. It is on the verge, for lack of better phrasing, of happening. It is right there. And then they do break through. They break through that dam, and this offense is clicking, and it looks good. It's not perfect. It's far from perfect. There's still major issues, but it looks good. And then 10 things break, and everything falls apart. And then it's tough to look at those wild card standings though and see like, yes, they're only a game and a half. Yes, they're only 2.5. But this team continues to struggle to just do the bare minimum required to go on a minimal run to get them like like solid striking distance, like gather solid footing somewhere in the standings here to go on a strike at some point this summer. They can't even get to that point, and it just like they reach out and then they fall back, and that's just what continues to suck. And to go back to like the point about the injuries, yeah, that is league-wide issue, but I will say I believe that was in Andy's article. I just read it this morning. Honestly, I was not going to read it. Nothing against Andy. Amazing coverage, and I read all of the banner stuff, but I just wasn't going to read it because, again, like going back to the beginning and answering this question, I need a break right now, and I just didn't want to go down this rabbit hole right now for my own mental sanity. But, I do think there are some of the troubling quotes of the Albarnez quote about injuries. I believe that was in that article there. And maybe hinting at maybe there is something that the Orioles need to do behind the scenes as far as the injuries are concerned. Is that an issue? I don't know if that's something we're going to get more information about. But also the point I think Andy made in there about like maybe it was a point that another scout or executive that he got anonymous quotes from had mentioned. The realization that, yeah, that championship window, it can stay open for a long time, but like you got to strike when the iron's hot. And I do agree that, and to focus it more on that article, I guess for a little bit there, I do think there was way too much emphasis on like the 2024 trade deadline led to this collapse. I don't think that's the case at all.
We'd be so much better with Mullen, Santander, and Hayes right now, right?
There's a lot of valid points in there, but to lead to the bigger overall point, I disagree with that. But I do agree that, and you bring up the fact that you only have a year and a half of Adley if you go in this mini rebuild right now, or retool, or whatever you want to call it. It is that realization that you look down at the farm, it's healthy, it's deep, it's still very solid, but you don't have the Gunner, the Cowser, like you don't have that.
No one's
core.
Coming to the rescue.
Yeah, you don't have that core anymore, and like time is slipping away pretty quickly here.
I do agree with Brian in the chat that this is worse than when we expect them to lose coming into the season. Yeah, especially when it looks great on paper and we like the moves they made, and boom, then to have the disappointment 2 years in a row is definitely crushing. I'm probably going to live 3 years less than I would have before 2025.
He's absolutely right. I mean, I think back to 2019 and 2021, those teams were horrible, but they were generally easier to watch because you just kind of knew they were going to lose, and that was it. And if they won, it was like a fun little surprise, but you had no expectation of them winning. The last 2 years, it's been just really hard to watch because this team does have high expectations. And to go into Andy's piece, I thought it was really well reported. It's really the only commentary on Mike Elias that I've seen in the last year that I think captures the nuance. John Mueller's written a lot of great things too, so I shouldn't say it's the only thing, but it's an example of something that does capture it with a lot of nuance. A couple of things I will say. I think if you go back to the 2022 trade deadline, which comes up in this piece, from the perspective of things that we can quantify, the Orioles won that trade deadline because I don't think that 2022 team was going to make the playoffs. and they traded Jorge Lopez when he was not pitching well to the Twins to get Yennier Cano, who became an all-star for them. Whether or not Cade Povich ever pans out to be anything more than he's been doesn't matter now. And I argued at the end of the 22 season that one of the benefits of that trade was that had Lopez not been traded, it would have delayed the inevitable Felix Bautista becoming the closer. The Trey Mancini trade, I know that there is a lot of strong feelings, understandably so. Fans love Trey Mancini, as they should. And yeah, Seth Johnson and Chase McDermott didn't work out. Let's acknowledge that. But Trey Mancini got a World Series ring out of that. So, it's one small consolation. In all of this, a World Series ring he would not have gotten in Baltimore. He probably wouldn't have been an Oriole beyond the 2022 season. And that was a 24 deadline. I do think that there may have been a missed opportunity there because beyond the Zach Eflin trade, they made a lot of moves that were going at the margins of the roster that didn't quite pan out, but they also didn't, other than Kyle Stowers, I don't think really lost anything of high impact in that deadline. I will say this, that if you go back to the 24 season, and this is something we could probably have a longer discussion about. I don't want to get completely sidetracked tonight. But I do think that Jordan Westburg getting hurt had an effect on that team down the stretch because that was a move that was something that you could not have anticipated at the time of the trade deadline. The trade deadline was focused on bolstering the starting rotation and rounding out the margins of the roster. Then Adley's second half slump continues. Westburg gets hurt. And yeah, Emmanuel Rivera had the best month of his life in the middle of all of that, but there was no question the lineup was not the same without Jordan Westburg. And then from that point on, it's just been one thing after the other.
I'll just say to close my end, I just appreciate Brian's other comment there that says not like this is like 1998, y'all are too young to remember that. I just appreciate that comment, and I'll say, yeah, I was too young to remember 1998 what it was like, because I'm feeling. Go back to Devin's question about the existential crisis of life and everything. Getting older and about to reach a new age milestone here that I am. It just adds to everything. I feel like maybe this is a little early midlife crisis going on here on top of everything. But that was a nice. I enjoyed that comment.
Thank you,
little
Brian.
Optimism shot.
Well, I guess I'm old because I remember it. 96 was my first year as a fan. It was amazing. 97, even better. Yeah, heartbreaking in the playoffs, but man, I could get used to this. No, I couldn't, in fact, because it's been all disappointment ever since.
I probably just don't remember it as well because my football team had already crushed my desire to watch sports. So, do you want to move on to the next question?
Sure.
Any other thoughts? I'm sure we'll get back to this conversation
This is going to be an ongoing discussion.
It will. So we're going to do, before we get into, as Zach alluded to, some of the more fun, lighthearted questions. A double-parter here. First part, Bird is the Word says, do you think Elias gets fired if we miss the playoffs? If so, who would you guys like to see as a replacement? And then Scott from Bird's Eye View, we're grouping these two together, says, if the front office is dismantled, who do you hope they retain? Kobe Perez would be his at the top of his list. So, Bob, any ideas, response, takes to those couple of questions?
As far as Mike Elias goes, I don't think he'll be fired. But I do think it's possible, and especially depending how bad the rest of the season goes, could go a long way on whether or not that happens. I don't see it happening. I think if we have another losing season and we don't make the playoffs, I think you'll see some more changes in the front office behind the scenes. You're going to have to shuffle things up at that point. Bring in your GM because he's already got that promotion. Bring in a GM. Maybe it relieves the pressure a little bit. I don't know, but my official guess would be Elias would stick around for one more year, potentially, to get things right, but with a new voice under him and some changes made. And as far as if it was the worst case scenario, and everyone, because in my opinion, I think Mike Elias is a good GM, but eventually that's not enough in sports. But if we're going to blow it up, yeah, Kobe Perez is a fantastic choice to keep around because what he's done with the international program has been outstanding. I would say Eve Rosenbaum, and unless she's tied to Elias in the way that Sig is tied to Elias, I'd love to see her stick around. I think she does a great job. I know she's been in charge of the waiver wire in the past, and you can see how successful the Orioles have been on that front, and give her more responsibility, see what she could do. But those would be my two if I had to pick.
This is a tough question to answer because when I started to think about this, it was before last season that Mike Elias was promoted to president of baseball operations, and I can't imagine that bump in title didn't come without some sort of lucrative contract to go along with it. The problem is we don't know what those terms look like because they've never been made public. But I'm going to err on the side of Elias probably having a few years left on that contract, which would not make it a clean break necessarily for ownership to just fire him. And honestly, I don't know that they would, just because my sense is also this ownership group, only 2 years in, really needs to figure out what it wants from a franchise. And until it has some sense of that, I don't know that they're going to move on from Mike Elias. But if they were to move on from him, this is how, in my pure speculation, I think it would happen. We'll get down towards the end of the season, and you'll start to hear murmurs that Mike Elias is free to talk with other teams. And then someone else hires him before the Orioles fire him. And I was thinking of some possible scenarios today. If the Giants want to admit to themselves that Buster Posey's not going to work out as an executive, maybe they revisit that. They were apparently close to hiring Elias when the Orioles hired him. I think he would be a really good fit there. I don't know exactly what the situation in the Twins baseball operations is right now, but I think they could kind of use an organization builder in the mold of Elias. And then, unless Jim Crane is just done with everything associated with Jeff Lunau, a reunion in Houston might make a lot of sense. But that's just speculation on my part. That's how I see it playing out, because I can't imagine that Mike Elias is in a situation where it'd be easy to just fire him. And then to the second part of the question, yes, I do think Kobe Perez would be the guy you would want to keep around. Whether or not you'd be able to do that is a separate issue entirely, but yeah, I think that's a good choice.
I would also just real quick like to say, I think Elias is a good GM. I don't think he's perfect or irreplaceable, but I don't know. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. You don't know. There are certainly plenty of capable people that could come in and run it just as well or better, but also, you might not like the replacement as much as Elias. So just be careful what you wish for. All these Elias is the fault of everything in the world, guys.
Yeah. Look, if he's gone tomorrow, I'm not shedding a tear despite what many people believe. I truly don't care, but I would put it at as close to, never say never, but I'd say it's as close to 0% chance this year, I think, as you can get. It's just, I don't know. As far as who could be a possible replacement, I can tell you two other GMs in baseball right now, Jerry Dipoto and AJ Preller, and that's it. I truly don't care about the front office aspect. But, this is talking about having the conversation when the Orioles were looking for a manager, and how tired we got of having that conversation, because it's hard to truly evaluate the impact of a manager, what they do behind the scenes, what exactly they're responsible for. We don't know the behind the scenes super inner workings of any of these organizations. And like Zach mentioned, we don't even know how much a lot of these general managers and front office executives make. So it's even more difficult to look out and say who would be better? How would they do things differently? That's just not something that I can speak to. So I don't feel confident in, answering that type of question. But I do think, first and foremost, there is no general manager right now. That position is vacant. So, and largely it's for the most part the same crew. You've seen some new additions, some outside hires come in and change the business operations and business aspects and, the media aspect and different things. But, for the most part, it's largely the same crew. And I would think maybe first and foremost, they bring in we say a GM that brings in a different voice, but as we know, typically this front office does like to bring in voices that match theirs or people they drew inspiration from in the past. Look at the hitting department. So who knows if that's going to be an entirely new voice, but I would probably start there. Someone bringing in some fresh ideas, some fresh perspective, another voice in the room that can maybe challenge traditional ideas and inner workings of the organization. and then maybe looking at internally some positions that they probably would replace. Who I have no idea. I don't want to get into that, but kind of maybe making some changes there in areas they think that they can improve on, maybe with the help of a new GM and seeing how that operates and everything. And as Zach said, the ownership group maybe getting a little bit more involved, having a better understanding, and then going from there before I think you'd see Michael Elias get fired. But.
For sure. All right, let's go to a more player-specific question. Tyler O'Neill. Talk about a guy who was brought in to do damage against left-handed pitching and just forgot how to do it. Does Tyler O'Neill get DFA'd this season, Zach?
I don't think he'll be DFA'd in season unless somehow the Orioles bounce back, which I don't know that they'll be able to do as long as he's here hitting the way he is right now. So in other words, if they bounce back, it's probably at least partially because Tyler O'Neill starts doing what Tyler O'Neill was brought in to do, which was rake against lefties and walk 10% of the time. So at that point, you're not really anxious to move on from him. If they're losing and they're sellers at the deadline, or they're just really not aggressive buyers, then I don't know who you're going to get rid of Tyler O'Neill to bring on the roster. Unless you decide that you're ready to try Judd Fabian out. But I would think that the more likely path at this point, if the Orioles are sellers, is that Taylor Ward is traded at the deadline rather than moving on from O'Neill. With that said, though, if the question was worded differently and it was, will Tyler O'Neill be DFA'd before the 2027 season, I think there's a possibility of it if things don't turn around. And I think that this could cut both ways, regardless of who's at the top of Orioles baseball operations. Let's suppose there's an extreme overhaul between now and the start of the offseason. The new general manager coming in is going to have this big contract on the books for only a year, but it's a player that they didn't sign, and they feel that they can use that roster space better, so they DFA him. Or Michael Elias has actually shown a willingness to move on from sunk cost in terms of contracts, especially in the Rubenstein era. So we saw that with Craig Kimbrell. We saw it last year with Kyle Gibson. And I would even say that while it wasn't a high financial cost, he kind of did that with Cole Irvin a few years ago, where he realized he had gotten the most that he could out of Cole Irvin, and although probably gave up more to get him than he would have liked to have at the time by trading Darell Hernandez, he moved on. So it's not as though Elias will get into these situations where he has a player around and the price tag is a barrier from him moving on if he feels that he can use that roster space better.
I just got a shiver when you said the name Cole Irvin. I don't know why, but also, like, if you DFA him now, I mean, my only thought about it, that's a great answer, but my only thought is, like, there's who in the organization is taking a spot. You mentioned Judd Fabian, but that's not a long-term option. The only right-handed hitting outfielders in AAA are Judd Fabian, Big Christmas, and Jonathan Rodriguez. None of them long-term options that you want to see in the lineup every day. There isn't a right-handed hitting outfielder in AA. Douglas Hodo, if you want to count that, he's on the IL, hasn't played really all year. Reed Trimble's on the 40 man. Would love to see Reed Trimble get some playing time. He's a switch hitter at least, but he went on the IL the first week of the year, goes through his rehab, gets back to Norfolk, last week, and is back on the IL again. So like there goes that. There's no one coming up to be like, if you push him off now, what are you going to replace him with? Unless there's like another acquisition in mind. But even the outfielders they're bringing off the waiver wire are lefties. So yeah, I don't see him going anywhere right now.
Maybe Heston Kjerstad can hit lefties as well as Tyler O'Neill has in his Orioles career today. But yeah, I don't see him getting DFA'd any sooner than mid-season 2027. I think it's possible they could try to unload his salary or roster space at some point. Maybe if it's a fire sale again this summer, that maybe you find a way to get him out of here, or in the off season, if you find a replacement, if EBJ is healthy and Fabian gets a shot and looks decent. Like, there are scenarios where I could see him off of the roster before his contract's up for sure. But DFA, I would say not before mid-season 2027.
Go over to this question now, and this is a recent development here with the Orioles. Jackson Holliday coming off the IL. Kevin wants to know, what are realistic expectations for Jackson Holliday as he comes off the IL. Bob, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to say coming into this spring training, I was bullish on Holiday breaking out in a big way. Finally, just like, what is he, 22 now? Just really showing his complete game that he showed throughout his brief minor league career. We're taking the walks, flashing some power, hitting for average. But the Hammett bone and the way he the way he responded to the injury, and didn't bounce back right away, had to go back on the injured list, rehab again. He says it's still pain where the surgery was, but he's back in the majors now. He did hit a triple and a home run in his most recent rehab. He did hit a ball pretty well today in his first game back, fly out to right field, also struck out. I'm keeping my expectations pretty low. I think similar. I think you could see him end up with like around 700 OPS and just like similar to last year, bat 260, 270, maybe more walks, less power, just because the Hammett bone can sap the power from players, especially if they're still feeling pain in that area. So, yeah, I'm going to say 700 OPS. You get the Jeremiah Jackal platoon, Jeremiah Jackson, Jackson Holiday, and he sets himself up for a really nice 2027.
Yeah, so rest of season projections, take them for what you will, have him at 8 to 9 home runs, a 240 to 250 hitter, anywhere from a 101 to a 106 WRC plus, and like a 1.2, 1.3, maybe 1.4 F4 player. Honestly, if he does that, I'll take it the rest of the year. Because like Bob said, the way he responded to this injury has been less than ideal. And he really only had those last, 2-3 games when he was in Norfolk on this rehab assignment where he really showed out with the bat. Other than that, it was rough. Not even a lot of nights where you can say, yeah, he's hitting the ball really hard, they're just not falling. You didn't even really see that most nights. But so yeah, if he's a 101 to 106 WRC plus hitter the rest of the way, he was 96 last year in the majors when he popped 17 home runs. He was worth 1.2 F4. If he can match that, if he can be above, even just slightly above league average bat and a 1.2 WAR player, I know a lot of people probably like that's depressing, but honestly, the injury and just knowing that everybody responds differently to it and seeing his response, it honestly does scare me a little bit. And seeing the way the rest of this team is performing, knock down the expectation a little bit. So yeah, I think those rest of the season projections, if he can meet those, I'm not going to say I'll be satisfied because that's dependent upon the rest of the team, but it will at least lead me going into 2027 optimistic that maybe we can see a little bit more from him moving forward, and there's still an up arrow next to his name.
I just want to see him trending in the right direction as the season goes on, heading into the off season, whether that's the end of September or sometime in October. We'll see.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that if he could do something along the lines of the end of season projections, I'd be very happy with that because it's a decent amount of power for someone coming off a hamate bone injury, and especially as both of you pointed out, someone who's had his fair share of setbacks on the road to recovery. I think that for me, the expectation that I have is that you get an OPS somewhere in the 700s, like Bob said, that's very on-base driven. We see him take a lot of walks. I wonder, because the strikeouts have been more of an issue for him in the majors than they were at any point in his minor league career. I wonder if he's able to make a little bit of progress in that area, especially as we get further into the season. If he could do that, I would be happy. But yeah, my expectations for him are just kind of, first of all, finish the season, don't have any more setbacks. But if he can do something close to the end of season projections, I would be fine with that.
Just finish the week at this point. But we go to a first, more fun question from Half. More prospect related. Let's lighten up a little bit here. So far this season, which pitcher in the minors, outside of the consensus top arms, have you most enjoyed watching as a fan? I like that little qualifier there at the end there. So, Bob, who have you enjoyed watching down on the farm as a fan so far this year?
I have a couple, and I'll just go with one. But all three of the ones that off the top of my head are relief pitchers who are having really solid years. Unfortunately, my pick is on the injured list just this past weekend. Micah Ashman, who just looks filthy dominant in 2 inning stretches at a time for Double A Chesapeake so far this season. Hopefully, it's a minor injury. That would be another devastating loss if it ended up being anything serious, because man, he looks like he could be that Grant Wolfram. Where did he go? Oh yeah, he's hurt too. He could be that like shutdown lefty late inning reliever at the major leagues if he can continue to develop and learn to get more experienced hitters out once he gets to AAA and then obviously to the majors. But yeah, I've been having fun with some relief arms. Fortunately, Tyson Neighbors not one of those. Another guy who's on the injured list now. But Mike Ashman, he's been my man so far this season.
I could watch an endless stream of Braden Sloan changeup clips. That pitch is ridiculous, and
That
if
was
he
another
can,
one of my picks.
yeah, if he's got one other pitch that approaches major league quality, he's going to develop into at least a pretty solid mid-inning reliever. Because when you have a changeup that moves the way that his does from the left side, that's really tough for hitters to square up on. For me, that would be the guy that I think is a lot of fun to watch, and also it's been fun to finally have data associated with Gerald Ogando's stuff, because we've been hearing so much about it for years in Double A, but the results have never matched up to it. And I don't know how things are going to pan out for him at Triple A, but it has been fun looking at StatCast data after his outings to see how those pitches look.
Do you guys quickly have anyone in the system to go along with this question of like, you don't care what their prospect status is, you don't care how bad it may get some nights? Do you have like a guy in the system where you're just like, I just love watching him play baseball, even though I know he's probably going to be like nothing? Like, when I saw this first question, I thought of the Ofelky Peralta days when we first started this episode. I knew it was bad, I knew it was going off the rails, and I knew where his career was going, but I still watched every outing. Do you guys have anybody like that in the system now?
Ben Cosme, Frederick Ben Cosme, and he's having a little bit of a resurgence. So I'm not saying that he can't be anything, but I will always enjoy watching him play. And honestly, this is kind of a burn, but also kind of a shout out Griff O'Farrell. Honestly, he plays defense and does all the little things right. If only he could hit. And to be fair to him, he's actually been pretty good over a stretch of time. But yeah, Griff O'Farrell and Frederick Ben Cosme, I would say for me.
As much as he's really has gotten under his skin at some points in the years, when Carlos Tavera is on, he is a lot of fun to watch. It doesn't happen often enough, unfortunately, but it is fun to watch. And then another guy that I put out there, and we're going to talk about him more in a little bit, but Alex Cuevas can fly. And it's fun to watch him move around the bases. And although I don't know that we've seen him as much in the outfield this year, he can cover some ground. And he's one of those guys that there's some real serious holes in his game that I think have been exposed a little bit at high A, but he's also hitting the cover off the ball right now.
Love it. But to Half's question, I think I as a fan, like, forget prospect status, I really enjoy watching, honestly, both the Cal State Fullerton guys, Evan Yates and Christian Rodriguez. They're both healthy this year. Like, just because the way I took this question was like, college baseball is legitimately my favorite sport. And like I was telling Bob before we came on, just today, 9 a.m., I had double screens going, conference tournament week. I'm over here. I got more enjoyment out of watching Tennessee Martin versus Lindenwood today. Shout out to Lindenwood, walk-off grand slam in the first round of the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament. I didn't know 2 years ago that Lindenwood was, I don't know if it's Lindenwood University, College of Lindenwood, I don't know what it is or where it is, but they were a lot of fun to watch. And I just get that enjoyment, like, as a baseball fan. I love watching mid to like lower level college baseball, learning about these guys, the guys with some crazy backstories, or they just play a style of baseball that I really love, and being able to follow them throughout their college career. And then sometimes the Orioles draft these guys, and I have more vested interest at that point in their development. And also just West Coast college baseball is just a hidden treasure that I think more people should enjoy, because it's truly awesome. And so I like watching Evan Yates and Christian Rodriguez kind of work their way through the organization right now. You know, even if Evan Yates, I think, is probably like, who's the guy? Houston Roth. He's like probably Houston Roth 2.0, right? But if he's suiting up for Chesapeake that night, like, I'm watching his outing without a doubt.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
All right, so let's go to Fujinami Truther. Great name. At this point from the 2025 class, who makes the majors first? It's looking like a 2-horse race between Irish and Jirwa. I'd say maybe Wahiwa Eloy's making it a 3-horse race, but what do you think, Nick?
I think it's the injury here. I think we got an update earlier on Monday about he's going to be out of the lineup for the next couple of days. Hopefully that's good news on the wrist hand injury, whatever, he got hit by a pitch the other day. I still think, regardless of the injury, I still think it's probably Irish, just because, again, like we talked about, it's very clear that he's not going to catch. So you're just riding the bat. I know he's had a rough past week before that injury, but that's just a blip. I could see both probably finishing the year with a cup of coffee in AAA, but I think Irish probably gets the edge because if he remains in the organization, that lefty bat, first base, DH, outfield, Jirwa, like, you want to see, can he hold that velo? He's added a couple ticks since the Orioles took him out of Michigan State. So can he hold that velo across a full season? He's a pitcher. There's just more check boxes to tick off. So I'd give the edge to Irish there.
As a general rule, I'm going to go with the position player in these kind of questions, especially when they have, I think, what's a fairly safe profile with Irish. Not to say that there aren't some questions that might pop up as he gets up to the higher levels in the minor leagues. But like Nick said, that lefty bat as a first base, DH, outfield type player, combine that with a pretty good hit tool, good judgment in the strike zone, I could see him being a guy that moves quickly and is at least a depth option in the majors before too long, possibly even more than that. With that said, though, Jirwa, give him credit. We're not even 2 months into the season. He's already gotten the promotion to Double-A. It feels like he could be on the Trey Gibson path of a year ago where he gets 3 levels in a season. That doesn't assure that we'll see him in 2027 in the majors because Gibson has that Rule 5 eligibility situation coming up, not to mention that he had 1 more year in pro ball than Jirwa does right now. But Jirwa's making a strong case. And Bob, I think you're right. I mean, I would put Eloy in that mix too. I know that there's a lot of concerns about the hit tool, but the defense at shortstop and the power gives him an interesting profile.
Yeah, the defense at shortstop is what makes it a 3-horse race for me. I can't pick Jirwa because there's a big, and it very much could be, if he forces the way, it's very possible. If he continues to pitch the way he did at Frederick all the way up to Double-A, to Triple-A, etc., he could be in the majors as soon as next year. I mean, we saw Trey Gibson start the year in High A, finish in Triple-A, and then already make his major league debut a year later. But I do think there's a lot of guys on the depth chart ahead of him as far as Gibson himself, Erman, Levi Wells, Luis De Leon, if Braxton Bragg is back, et cetera, plus Povich Young, blah, 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 blah. But I think Ike Irish is the answer. He's just, there is going to be room at corner outfield for a guy that can just hit the way he does, even if it's, a Dylan Beavers type where you're not going to expect him to come up right away and do what he's doing so far in High A. But I think he's a professional enough hitter, adaptable enough hitter that he could hold his own in a corner outfield and develop at the major league level pretty soon.
All right, we'll go into this question here, and this will be the last mailbag question before we go into our last call question of the night. And this one comes from Nora. What are your thoughts on Fangraph's new prospect list for the Orioles? Any surprises? Nick, it was a pretty big piece over at Fangraphs. 63 prospects reported, plus some additional notes on other players. So what were your thoughts?
675,000 words to dive through, but good read. We did have somebody, I forget who it was. I don't know if you listened to the show or not. Somebody on X was like, I need an article responding to this Fangraphs piece. we could do a whole episode. We probably should have, but I did jot down a few notes. So I've, the top 10 or so, I feel like nothing really new there. A lot of points we've made and written about plenty, but I thought his Nate George write-up was pretty fair this year. I enjoyed reading that. I enjoyed the optimistic outlook on Enrique Bradfield Jr. In his write-up. He noted that small sample, but more impact this year before he went on the IL. I know we talked about that as well, so it was good to see that validation that even though it's a small sample, it was worth taking note of in his entire thesis that he wrote here. I am prepared to be hurt by Elvin Garcia more than I was entering the year, because another glowing report from Longenhagen on Elvin Garcia, who he saw as number 20 on that list. Twine Palmer at 26, fun surprise. He's having a good year. Without access, to more pitch data, though, I've always been, I don't know if you guys have felt, but I've had a hard time crafting like a more firm opinion about Twine Palmer so far this year. But like Eric noted, the improving command, the unique delivery, fastball traits seem pretty metrically sexy there. Bring that phrase back. Always a good phrase to use. He's still in on Twine Palmer, got him in the top 30 now, which is good to see. So going to pay more attention there. Jaden Loray at 30 and Jabot Newell at 31. Like, I would love that. If the Orioles, we're getting ahead of ourselves. It's been 2 weeks in the FCL, but if the Orioles want to promote both those guys to Delmarva, I will make the 4.5 hour drive it is for me to go to a Shorebridge game. Sebastian Gongora, I loved how aggressive. Well, it was Baseball America that got super aggressive on Gongora in their update, but still, I think Longenhagen notes he sees a potential back-end starter. Love that. Again, more validation on our Gongora thoughts lately. I take issue with 3 things, though. The exclusion of 3 names. Not even a mention, because he does, the top, was it 63? And then he adds, 20, 25 other names at the end. I love those extra little blurbs that he does put in there. But no mention in the 90 prospects you put in there. No mention of Blake Money. I know he's out for the year. He's going to be 25 when he comes back, but he was a really good pitching prospect last year. No mention of Andrew Tess was a little surprising. I thought he did a lot well. We've talked about him a lot. There have been a lot of articles up on Substack, I think, from all 3 of us about Andrew Tess. He did a lot of things well last year at a very young age as a catcher. So we don't know what his injury is. Maybe it's an amputation at this point and why Eric Longenhagen refused to note him. But yeah, surprised to see Andrew Tess and Caden Hunter. I think missing Caden Hunter on your 90 prospects there is malpractice. And I know 1.5 guys that do this, but it is hard to evaluate Caden Hunter being an advanced college arm in low A, delayed start to the year. The numbers are incredible, but given all of that, his age, everything, I get it's hard to evaluate him, but he's still a lefty holding 95 deep into outings with a really good changeup, gets a ton of whiffs. You could have at least thrown the guy a bone at the bottom of your list or in the extra section and be like, potential arrow up name here, Caden Hunter. I just thought that was the big miss there.
There's always going to be some weird stuff, like Samuel Basayo, what didn't show up in one of the lists like 4 or 5 years ago, I want to say. Like, we were like, wait, where's Samuel Basayo? And then it was like just a 1-sentence thing, like, yeah, he hits the ball hard, but blah, 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 blah. And then he had to correct on that one. But yeah, Colton Cowser can't play center field. There's always going to be these weird misses with Longenhagen, but I do really appreciate the effort and the time that he puts into these things. And, he's trying his best. I do think they're a little underfunded, but it's not as much about the rankings in particular and what do they think. It's more the write-ups is where I'm getting stuff out of, like learning little tidbits here and there that I hadn't heard before, but clearly he's plugged in enough to hear things. So I think it's very valuable from that standpoint. I'm not really taking the rankings themselves that seriously. I do agree with the overall, and obviously because we've been saying this for a while, but I agree with the overall assessment that, hey, one of the deepest farm systems in baseball, but they don't have anyone that's like top 50, at least at the moment. Like, don't have the next guy, which we've already talked about actually on this episode, but after Basayo and Beavers graduated. But yeah, it was a great article. I really appreciated have something to read this week with how bad the Orioles have been playing, especially. And, just don't take it take it with a grain of salt, but there's definitely some really, really, really good stuff in there.
And the very end, if you get through all of that, his overall analysis of the system at the very end, I thought was also, I could bring it up and discuss it here, but go read it. I thought his overall evaluation of the farm system was also critical, but also extremely fair as well. But good read.
Absolutely. I thought that last point that he made was very fair. It's a deep system, but it doesn't have the star potential impact that it had a few years ago. I felt this way about the list that I felt about lists from Fangraphs in the past, which is that at first glance, I'll look at the rankings and it's like, oh, he's got Ibra Cartaya all the way up at number 11, and I've probably been the high man on Cartaya among the three of us in the last year, but I've never come that close to putting him in the top 20, let alone the top 10, or just outside the top 10. But when you read the report, I think that he kind of accurately captures who Cartaya is as a player. I think the other thing, too, is that you get really good breakdowns of player swings, which is why I was not surprised that Steven Martinez didn't rank inside the listing of the top 63 prospects, but was sort of a footnote down at the bottom because the physical tools with Martinez, he flashes them, and I do think his swing looks better this year than it did when I saw him with Delmarva at the end of last year, but it does have a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that if you really dissect it, you're like, oh, well, someone with a couple of above average breaking balls is going to find some holes in the swing. The thing is, it's just, as you're evaluating Martinez as a prospect, you want to consider the age, you want to see what kind of improvements he makes over the course of the year, which is probably why I'm a little bit higher on Martinez than they are at Fangraphs, but it is kind of a messy swing. So I can see where he would get dinged for that. And with that, now we will head into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. This season, if you're heading out to the ballpark Memorial Day weekend, be sure to check them out. But if you don't have tickets to the game or the Orioles are out of town, it's still a great place to go and watch the game. Plenty of good food and drink. They're also open 7 days a week with plenty of TVs to check out the action. So check them out, Checker Spot Brewing, located 1421 Ridgely Street in South Baltimore, open 7 days a week. And in our final segment tonight, we will do our usual shout-out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 prospects list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or just something interesting in their stat line that we want to point out. And I'm going to start off with Bob on this one. And he's got a pitcher coming back from an injury and a hitter that is coming back after a couple of tough years.
Yeah, pitcher, which actually it was a pretty good week as far as getting some guys back from injury this week. We had Andy Fabian start a rehab stint. We also had Ramon Gomez. He's alive. He's throwing. And we have my guy here who I picked, Francisco Morale, who is a 6'2", 20-year-old left-handed pitcher signed out of Venezuela in 2023. He had a really good DSL debut, 39 and a third innings, pitched to a 3.89 ERA with a 30% strikeout rate. Struggled a bit in his first FCL season, then came back last year and had a 3.38 ERA over 34 and two-thirds innings with 28% strikeout rate. And just nice to see him back because he's a legit pitching prospect out of the international scene, and I think he'll be in Delmarva once he's fully back to full strength. And just looking at the data, which we luckily do have on the FCL game day, he was like 92, 93 with the sinker and four-seamer, had curveball, slider, changeup. So 5-pitch mix, left-handed pitcher. If he can slowly build up that velocity as he develops and get things working well, he's just another name to throw in the long list of interesting pitching prospects that the Orioles have. And on the position player front, I'm going with Braylon Tavera, who is pretty quickly here getting his name back in the prospect mix for me. He's in top 50 consideration again because 21 years old still, only after being signed in 2022 out of Dominican Republic for what might still be the record. It's either him or Luis Almeida, but over $2 million he signed for. Had a tough go of things the first few years, but he's progressed a little bit. But in the last month or so, since April 17th, he's actually batting .324 with a .990 OPS, which is good for a 160 WRC plus, 17% walk rate, 29% strikeout rate, which is pretty good for him, 211 ISO, which is 3 doubles and 4 home runs in 89 plate appearances, and 12 stolen bases while playing a pretty capable outfield. So if you're looking for your guys that are going to strike out a lot and are toolsy and are outfielders, forget about Vance Honeycutt. Let's talk about Braylon Tavera.
Braylon Tavera he keeps doing it, finally. So if he can keep that hot stretch going, that was a big issue last year. I feel like it was the hot stretch and the cold stretch, but if he's been much more consistent this year, I think, than ever before. My hitter, I'm going to stick in the FCL for my hitter. A lot of these hitters are living up to expectation early on. Even some of the guys that had slow first weeks, like Wilfred De La Cruz, he's starting to pick it up. He had a strong week, but Jamon Newell, just mentioned him a second ago, but hit 250 last week, just 3 for 12, but it was 2 doubles and a triple were his 3 hits. He also walked 3 times, struck out just twice. And we've talked a lot about his growth from year 1 to year 2 in the DSL, and he's translating that over to the FCL so far. Just 37 plate appearances, but he has a 19% strikeout rate, which is down a tick from last year's 20%, and it was 30% the year before that. So continuing to trend in the right direction, and he's running a 21% walk rate. Granted, most pitchers in the FCL can't control anything, so that balloons that a little bit, but still, he's patient. So lots of walks, lots of extra base hits. He's also 3 for 3 in stolen base attempts, and he's 68 for 76 in his career. So, yeah, we'll be 19 all year, hopefully up in Delmarva by the end of the year. And then my pitcher, Zach talked about him a minute ago, Braden Sloan. A lot of pitchers you could have highlighted this week, but just wanted to shout out Sloan because he just continues to be unreal. Clearly, my dreams of the Orioles adding more velo and transforming him into a starter aren't going to come true, but as Bob talked about, going back to the Fangraphs article and learning little tidbits here and there about some guys, there was a note in Braden Sloan that I think Eric Longenhagen noted about, like, the arm speed maybe not being ideal. So maybe the Orioles just felt like they're not going to be able to get much more velo out of his arm. But as a reliever, it's working right now. And he went 2 no-hit innings last week with no walks, 4 strikeouts on the year. Between Delmarva and Frederick, Sloan has 15 innings, a .60 ERA, 27 strikeouts, 4 walks. That's a .33 whip and a .022 average against. So, yeah, he's dominating, as Zach said, with the changeup. Curious to see if it can be effective against upper minors hitters, and hopefully he's up in Double-A soon.
Absolutely. And I'll go over now to my hitter, and it's Ellis Cuevas. I just talked about him a moment ago. After a really rough April, Cuevas has come alive in the month of May, and we saw that last week during Frederick's series against Hudson Valley. Cuevas had 3 multi-hit games, including a 2 for 5 performance with a homer on Saturday. On the month of May, he's hitting .345 with 5 homers, and it was after an April in which he could not get up to the Mendoza line. Now, there are still some flaws, as I touched on a minute ago. Cuevas has a pretty high strikeout rate compared to a low walk rate still, so you want to see those numbers start to trend in the right direction. But for a guy that had a really up and down 2025, go back to that season, he was on the IL at the start of the year. He comes out and is basically a league average bat at Delmarva before he gets promoted to Aberdeen at the end of the year. Then goes to Frederick at the start of this year, and we had the questions going into the season, how are they going to find at bats for him? Because there's a lot of outfielders. They've got Ike Iris at first base. Cuevas, after a slow start, has become a really important part of that Frederick lineup. And then for my pitcher, it's Caden Hunter. Carolina League Pitcher of the Week at Delmarva. 2 excellent outings against Fayetteville. He went a combined 8 2/3 innings over those 2 starts, striking out 18 while allowing just 1 run. He struck out a career-high 10 batters on Tuesday's start. He now has a .95 ERA in 19 innings pitched this season. As Nick touched on a minute ago, he's done a really good job maintaining his fastball velocity in his starts. And I think that he's also, after struggling with his command in his first outing of the season off the IL, really turned a corner in that area as well. I have to think that he's close to a promotion to Frederick. I don't know exactly what the Orioles' litmus test is going to be. Do they just want him to get more innings, especially because he did miss a little bit of time at USC last year with an injury and then didn't pitch after the draft? But I have to think that he's close at this point.
I would imagine he fills Giroir's spot, whether it's this week or very soon, with Giroir going up to Double-A, which is exciting. We haven't mentioned it. And nice of you to sneak him on here before June when he might not be eligible.
And with that, that does it for this episode this week. We will be back later on this week to revisit the 2024 draft class. You're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon.com and sign up to become a member today. You can join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels, have access to bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list, access to patron-exclusive channels within our Discord community, and a whole lot more. So be sure to check that out at Patreon.com. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.